Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our February webinar. I'm Denise, and with me to present is QAD and MRP expert, Don Lindsay. Please know that everyone connects to the webinar already muted, but feel free to type in questions or comments at any time throughout the session. And then during the Q&A, immediately after Don's presentation, we'll address questions in the order received. And now the main event. Here is just some of the experience Don brings to each and every webinar. So let's go ahead and learn from instructor extraordinaire.
Good morning. Over the last several years, the supply chain has matured in assorted different ways. Some of the changes have been caused by the disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic, while those changes have come about as the result of enhancements in technology. Over the last several months, in our webinars, we have talked much about QAD specifically. From purchasing to MRP to dates in QAD, we have talked about QAD functionality. Today, we would like to talk and take a look at not only the future of QAD, but of the supply chain in general. Gardner and IDC are talking about supply chain control tower functionality, supply chain planning applications, supply chain management and control applications. So let's take and try to put these in some perspective. Before we delve into the details of the supply chain control tower functionality and how it relates to QAD, let's talk a bit about where and how supply chains came about. Supply chain management has been around for thousands of years. As far back as 7500 BC, people were using markings and indentation on cave walls to keep records of various activities such as grain harvest, animal kills, anything that was important to the individual or group to remember. The tally stick, or simply tally, was an ancient memory aid device used to record and document numbers, quantities, even messages. The tally stick first appeared as animal bones that were carved with notches during the Upper Paleolithic era. A notable example is the issue bone. With the domestication of plants and animals, the development of trade networks developed during the Neolithic period. People began recording information about their agricultural goods and other activities in the form of small clay tokens. Scholars believe that the written form of language that is used to pass this information along evolved out of this simple process of accounting. Cones, spheres, and flat discs were thought to represent small, medium, large measures of grain. Ovals were jars of oil. Cylinders, a sheep or a goat. And a pyramid were a person's days of work. We've been doing production inventory control for several hundred years now. Before the Industrial Revolution, merchants had to write down all of the products that they sold every day. Then they had to order more products based on their handwritten notes or their gut feelings. This is an incredibly inefficient and inaccurate way to do business. Inventory during these days was managed by a system known as the Cardex system. These were bin cards that were kept in every bin location, and when inventory was put in or removed from the bin, the card was updated. Apart from the bin cards, books and registers were maintained to note down various transactions, and reports were prepared manually. In the late 1960s, IBM created a computer program called the BOMP, the Bill of Material Processor, which allowed the statement of a product's structure to be stated in terms of a parent-component relationship inside a computer program. MRP is described as a set of techniques which uses bills of material, inventory data, and master production schedule to calculate requirements for an item. MRP then makes time-phased recommendations to release or reschedule replenishment orders for material. Here is the basic MRP grid showing gross requirements, scheduled receipts, projected available, net requirements, planned order receipt, and planned order release dates. We have covered these calculations in several prior webinars, so I'll refer you to the 32Soft website for specifics. During the 1970s and 80s, Oliver White and others developed MRP into MRP2, Manufacturing Resource Planning. This is an integrated information system used by business to centralize, integrate, and process information for affecting decision-making in scheduling, design, engineering, inventory management, and cost. ERP is an accounting-oriented information system used by businesses to control enterprise-wide resources. Both MRP2 and ERP are pieces of software that help run the business. MRP is purely manufacturing focused as opposed to ERP, which spans across the business to include finance, distribution, as well as supply chain management. The supply chain control tower, which is the next generation of supply chain applications, is being referred to as the supply chain control tower. These are agile cloud-based platforms where the focus is on providing end-to-end supply chain visibility. By integrating and extending existing ERP, warehouse management systems, transportation systems, suppliers, customers, manufacturers, 3PLs, and other partners, control towers provide actionable and granular visibility and operational control across the entire supply chain. There are basically two types of control towers. First is a transportation-focused tower. Transportation-focused towers mainly offer insights into inbound and outbound shipments with visibility into automated shipping, deliveries, tracking, and tracing. The second type of supply chain control tower is supply chain focused. And this is focused on multiple enterprises within the supply chain, ensuring visibility across internal as well as external processes. In addition to transportation, these supply chain control towers can include planning, sales, purchase orders, inventory across internal, external suppliers, manufacturing, maintenance, and repair, because they offer true end-to-end visibility and in-app control of applications across that supply chain. As noted by Gartner, to be considered for inclusion in their magic quadrant for supply chain control applications, vendors must have new and existing customers in at least 3 of these industries: 3PLs, consumer, distribution, high tech, oil and gas, aerospace, auto, chemical, life science, healthcare, and industrial. As customers are looking for greater visibility of their extended supply chain software vendors are answering the call by providing solutions that cut across functional and organizational silos. The market for control tower solutions continues to remain fairly fragmented, with many vendors finding success in industries verticals and in particular areas such as planning and execution. Although originally designed to deliver visibility, many vendors are shifting their control towers to where there is a promise of an autonomous supply chain. The control tower market size was valued about $5.8 billion in 2019 and is expected to compound at an annual growth rate of about 17% to about $18 billion by 2027. As mentioned, the market for supply chain applications is in its early stages. There are lots of players. A lot depends on how you look at the supply chain applications. Is it a tower or a planning tool or a management system? Here we see the value matrix for Nucleus Research as of 2019. It details leaders, facilitators, core providers, and experts in the area of supply chain control towers. Companies include Elementum, Connexus, JDA Software, One Network, EDA Open, SAP, Infor, others in that nucleus research ranking. IDC, here we see the IDC ranking for supply chain planning applications. Here the control towers are noted as leaders, major players, contenders, and participants. We see Dassault Systems, Infor, Blue Yonder, Oracle, EDA Open, SAP. There's QAD, Conexus, Logility. Gartner, with their supply chain planning quadrant as of May 2019, we can see there's lots of players in this somewhat fragmented market, from Adexa to Demand Solutions, EDA Open, Gain, JD Rivers, there's Conexus again, Logility again, Oracle, Outperform, there's QAD again, RiverLogic. A couple of these companies, such as EDA Open and One Network, appear in several versions of these rankings. Now that we've seen some of the players in the supply chain control tower market, let's consider some of the capabilities that these vendors are offering. Here are some of the functions that you might want to see in a secure supply chain control management application. First is this computerized business management concept of a single version of the truth, SVOT. This is a technical concept describing the data warehousing ideal of having either a single centralized database or at least a distributed synchronized database which stores all of the organization's data in a consistent and non-redundant format. Consensus: the demand plans that combine forecast with multiple functional perspectives from events and input from sales, marketing, finance teams, and other collaboration partners. Demand planning transcends the physical entity boundaries of the organization, ensuring that the best possible end-to-end picture of future demand and supply across multiple enterprises. Supply chain management tools deal with very large product portfolios and huge transactional volumes. Management by exception ensures that the planner's efforts are focused on those events which give the most value add to the organization. If you remember from our discussions of MRP, the principle of only manage that which goes wrong, not that which goes right. Demand cleansing provides for an automated detection process along with correction of outliers and other analysis of historical data using machine learning algorithms. Baseline planning automates and segregates historical promotional activities from more organic demand, ensuring a promotional-free baseline of statistical forecasting. We've spent several webinars over the last year discussing forecasting techniques. Supply chain towers or planning applications support complex seasonality, external factor analysis, trend analysis, and auto selection of best fit scenarios. They then drive that directly back into the ERP system. Supply chain tower and planning forecasting capabilities use machine learning that can accommodate short period horizons, step changes across middle entities, and through multi-echelon forecasting levels, detailing and aggregating forecasts top down and bottom up, and from the middle up and down. Complex forecasting reconciles forecasts based on different incidents, such as events, products, customers, environments, and markets. Demand sensing methods are consumer or customer real-time demand signals. Remember, we discussed the demand signals in a couple of our prior webinars. To drive short-term horizon demand management, in addition, they can offer the capability to simulate price volume trade-off scenarios. Demand shaping. Demand shaping is the capability of influencing demand to match planned supply. For example, in a manufacturing business, dynamic pricing can be used to manage demand. Dell is one of the best examples of companies that practice demand shaping with dynamic pricing. Product lifecycle management Manage the product lifecycle information, ensuring demand expectations align with the product lifecycle stage. They take into account new product introduction planning, growth tapering, pipeline fill functionalities, supersession management, and early obsolescence identification. You want a system in which a safety stock optimization is based on service levels, inventory costs, supply chain demand variation. Remember from our apex calculations, the safety stock is equal to K, the service level times the adjusted mean absolute deviation of demand times the lead time factor differentiation between the forecast interval and the lead time interval. Future proofing technologies include mobility, such as iPhones, digital tablets, digital watches, digital glasses, whatever they come up with next. Internet of Things, digital twins, artificial intelligence, prescriptive analysis, in-memory processing, and future integrations. You never know where technology is heading, and you want your supply chain control application to take that into account. Let's look at a few of the prominent supply chain application players and some of their marketing points. Logility talks about advanced analytics with a bird's eye view of your supply chain. Integrated business planning that unites strategic and tactical planning years into the future. Connected enterprise, collaboration, both internal and external, in as little as 30 to 60 days. Well, maybe not. Connexus talks about digital transformation, disruption and volatility, sustainability, applications such as supply chain operation planning, demand planning, supply chaining, inventory management, command and control. With concurrent planning, artificial intelligence, they have a great user experience. Developer studio, integration security, but it looks like it's only or mostly for SAP customers. And then IBM. IBM talks about the ability to deliver end-to-end visibility, AI assisted insights, collaboration across teams, the ability to accelerate time to value. E2Open, which is one of the better or higher ranked supply chain applications, has channel shaping, demand sensing, business planning, global trade, transportation, collaborative manufacturing, supply management, complexity management. The One Network, another highly thought of application, provides real-time version of a single version of the truth, end-to-end visibility, a multi-partner network, planning and execution in one planet or one platform, real-time alerts, prescriptive analysis, automated returns, routines with global demand supply match. All of these companies make it sound easy. Now let's look at a supply chain application that is close and dear to our hearts. QAD Dynasis. It has been in business since about 1985. It started off in the food and beverage industry, actually in the bakery industry. About 52% of its install base is in food and beverage and consumer products. QAD acquired Dynasis in about 2015. The QAD Dynasis application, or DSCP, Demand Supply Chain Planning, enables you to optimize, analyze, simulate, collaborate, understand, and efficiently plan your supply chain activities. Dynasis offers a range of solutions: demand planning, inventory optimization, supply planning, manufacturing planning, financial planning, sales and operation, integrated business planning, machine learning, even DMRP, which was one of my webinars from last year. As with Gardner and QAD definition of industries, Dynasis concentrates on the following industries and has customers all over the world in these 6 verticals. Dynasis can integrate with any ERP system such as Oracle, Infor, SAP, Bespoke, and others. About 40% of Dynasis install base is QAD. Dynasis continues to mark well in both Gartner and IDC classification rankings. Dynasis is ISO certified and cloud certified by the AI CPA and the SOC. And Dynasis has four primary functions that exist within its horizon of sales and operations planning: procurement, production, distribution, and demand planning. Integrated business planning process and sales operation planning processes are primary tools in Dynasis. We'll cover more about sales and operations planning and integrated business planning process in our webinar during June of this year. Demand planning is one of the primary tools in the Dynasis toolkit. It begins with dynamic analysis, which includes validation of input, detection of outliers, cleansing, event management, product segregation. That feeds into life cycle management with the beginning to end of life analysis, phase in, phase out data, the supersession management. Then it calculates the forecast with the Dynasis statistical engine, including trend analysis, seasonality calculations, engineering factors, simulation visioning, and archiving. Then it goes out to the partner network through a collaboration process with event management for your partners, suppliers, and customers. Once the forecast is finalized and approved, it is exported to QAD 2021. Distribution planning in Dynasis looks at dynamic safety stock dimensioning over the network, transportation capacity dimensioning over the network, full truckload loading, optimized inventory levels, and identification of shortages and overstocks. Procurement planning looks at purchase policy compliance. It generates an optimized production plan managed by exceptions. It optimizes containers, full truckloads, considering minimum value requirements, cost optimizations, quantitative scales, inventory cost, and inventory management. Production planning in Dynasis has an analysis of inventory by anticipation in days, capacity analysis with resource usage rates. It considers gap analysis between new demand and current capacity and balances production constraints and company strategies, considering capabilities, inventory anticipation, item priorities, lot sizes, and other considerations. It projects inventory levels, displays risks of shortages, calculates resource utilization, and scheduling adherence. Since QAD is the system of record, let's take a look at the API, the application program interface, between QAD and Dynasis to get a feel for the data elements which are critical to the operation of both Dynasis and QAD. Here's a typical Dynasis planning process. You start out first with the export of data from QAD into the data hub. You then optimize the planning process in Dynasis. With a collaborative input, we adjust and approve the plan and then feed that information back into QAD. Now that we've looked at some of the specifics of the Dynasis supply application, and since most of us users are down at the operational field and table level in QAD, let's take a look at QAD ERP and QAD Dynasis applications and how they talk to each other. Any supply chain application needs to get its operational data from the resident ERP system. QAD is our system of record. The technical layout of the interface is complex by its nature, but we will concentrate primarily on the definition of fields and the tables that are used between the systems. What I'm going to show you should not indicate an involatile data structure. Dynasis to QAD data flow can be as flexible as you want or need. To get the data from QAD to Dynasis, there are two main sets of input flows. The static data flow, that is the static data that relates to the objects that are going to shape the hierarchy in Dynasis and are designed to build dimensions for those data fields. The second is the dynamic data flow. Dynamic data flow is concerned with the planning data. Both dynamic and static data are read from QAD Enterprise Database and then transferred to Dynasis Data Hub via an OBDC connection. The export process or sequence from Dynasis is exported from Dynasis and must go through QExtend to be integrated back into QAD. To this purpose, the export function is strict and requires definition and consistency. The actual process is that Dynasis creates some XML files. Dynasis transforms those XML files into QDoc format with the standard XSLT, and then sends those QDocs through a web query through QExtend in a simple object access protocol. The notion of item site does not exist in Dynasis as it does in QED. Dynasis therefore needs to create all combinations of existing item sites in order to manage production. All the information is defined at the item level and can be changed by sites. Application filters to control the number of items that QAD sends is recommended. Item site records are the SKU level for domain, part number, site number, buyer planner code, make buy code, supplier part inventory code, and they come from part site PTI and PTP tables. The item site history of sales comes from IDH, the part site PTP, and the part site inventory PTI data records for item, buyer, and memo codes. The import of sales history is recorded in what is referred to as L1 records. Dynasis considers both open orders from SOD in sales orders and from the IDH invoice information. L1 records or master table contains records from both in what is referred to as a pyramidal or multi-level forecast. Dynasis contains this multi-level pyramidal or multi-echelon forecast at three primary levels: the family site months, the item site months, and the item customer months. History cleansing is done at level 1 of the forecast. Lifecycle management is done at level 2. History cleansing for calculating start at the item customer level and working through the item site to the family site level combination. The forecast top-down process accounts for new product events and final forecast consolidation from family site to item site down to the item customer level. And bottom-up forecasts account for history cleansing and forecast calculations. Level 1 records for open sales orders come from SO Master and the sales order detail for domain, item, site, and sold to. The level 1 records for history sales come from IH and IDH for domain, item, site, and customer. And level 1 records for open sales orders come from sales order master and sales order detail, again for item, domain, site, shipped to, and sold to. The standard cost for open sales order detail come from the cost simulation set detail for items, domain, site, cost total, and cost set. And supplier data comes from QED's VD master for supplier address, supplier sort name, and supplier domain. The dynamic mapping between Dynasis elements and the information source in QED allows for the correct usage of all tables in the data hub. Prior to the dynamic import, Dynasis rolls the horizon in the Dynasis system to realign the current date to a pre-configured import task sequence, allowing the next imports to include data within the correctly considered horizon only. Records for demand come from open orders, from sales order, domain, item, safety stock, time fence, from the part planning detail. Records for sales order history come from the invoice history for domain, part number, due date, line order quantity, unit of measure, and exchange rate data. The dynamic data for Dynasis production planning, all points are defined in the QED item master and can be changed at the item site level. In Dynasis, we are importing into Dynasis only at the SKU level in accordance with the QED rules. As normal, if there is no data in the item site record, QED goes and looks at the item level for SKU information. The records for item master data come from the domain, the part number, site, safety stock time, fence, order policy minimum, safety lead time, inspection lead time, and order period. They all come from the SI master and the PT master. Initial inventory is imported at the SKU level in daily buckets. Only inventory that expires in the future, that is the date plus current date horizon, are imported into Dynasis. Import can't be restricted as to specific values of the LD status. So you might have to relook at the definitions you have. The maximum or minimum production order is imported directly from QAD. Import only includes work order statuses different from firm, planned, and closed. The import production data includes all past orders that are not launched or not closed and are imported into the same record in Dynasis at the SKU level as a sum of the values. So ideally, no such past due work orders exist in QAD. Location records come from the LDD, item, domain, part number, site, lot expiration, quantity on hand. The work order records information from the work order master for the domain, the part number, the site, work order release date, due date, and work order quantity. Bill of material records information from the PS master for the domain, the part, parent, component, part, the relationship with start and end date, quantity of batch if appropriate, component scrap percentage, and component lead time offsets. The Dynasis production plan is exported directly and creates planned work orders in QAD, or more precisely, the export task resets the ERP orders that are not started yet and are outside of the frozen horizon. After the forecast is calculated, validated, and approved in Dynasis, it is exported at the item site level and is available for integration into the QAD's ERP 22.1 forecast maintenance. The export task uses XSLT files to create XML flow that is compatible with QDocs, and then the QDocs are sent to QExtend to be imported into QAD. There are 72 fields in 15 tables that are impacted by the QAD to Dynasis input process. You need to understand each of these fields, their possible values, and how they interact with QAD and the Genesis or Dynasis planning process. Let's take a quick look at the process maps that exist in QAD for Dynasis to get an idea of the flow. I don't know how many of you use or are familiar with process maps, but if any of you remember the old Quizzard or have used Visio, you'll know what the process maps are. Process maps are flexible Visio-like tools that can be used by the organization to define their business processes and executions within QAD. There are three primary uses of the process maps in QAD. At the Gestalt level, you can see how processes are affected by upstream and downstream to see the whole company process. They can be used to help define processes for uses for audits, work orders, work instructions, etc. And in training, users can follow the process maps, which can take them directly into QAD screens to do their work. Remember, process maps may be different for your organization. Process maps begin at the home page and are divided into easy onboarding for NetUI and Channel Islands, supply chain views, and an ICT view. Let's look at the supply chain processes. These are made up of the setup, plan, source, make, deliver, inventory, design, enable, engage, and finance. All of the things that you're going to need to do in your supply chain. And the process maps themselves are divided into the 7 primary industries that QAD and Dynasis serve: automotive, pharma, med device, industrial, high-tech, consumer, and food and process. I'm going to look at the life science and in the life science. And I would recommend that all of you dive into the process maps and explore. They're great for training processes, consistency, documentation, testing. Each of the process maps, there is a process map for Dynasis, or what is referred to as the DCSP. In the Dynasis process map, you see there are 6 process maps: sales operations planning, demand planning, procurement planning, production, distribution, and a combination. The 4 that are in dotted lines are not defined in the process maps, as it is assumed that in a QAD environment, these functions are going to be handled by the ERP functionality. In all of the Dynasis process maps, we see 4 ovals at the bottom of the page for metrics, compliance, training, and work instruction. Metrics can show KPIs for manufacturing, quality, production, scrap, whatever you think is important. Compliance can show documents for many situations, from codes of federal law to regulations to QAD menus, functions such as supplemental analysis fields, configured products. You can also house your work instructions for your organization, and you can use these for training. As it says, it takes you directly into the applications. In demand planning process map, we see horizon and import, which we mentioned in regards to the API, and that there is a monthly demand process or a weekly demand process, and the publishment of those results. In demand planning process, for the horizon roll-in process, you can review the monthly data or weekly data and publish the results. This allows you to do some products monthly, while others you may want to review and process weekly. The weekly demand process begins with the importation of the sales order from QAD. If any promotional input is required, then it goes out and through historical analysis, ensuring that the data is cleansed for outliers, etc. It then looks at the lifecycle management parameters and calculates the sales forecast. If an initial collaboration is required, the system calculates the weekly demand, validates the demand, and allows for adjustment of a consensus approval and the creation of baseline coefficients. It then generates the weekly output, and that can be input into 22.1. After the weekly and monthly review is imported, QAD goes through the sales forecast calculation, which consists of forecast analysis, a model setup process, and a family forecast calculation that has any amendments to the family setup values. Sales and operations planning is an integral business management process through which the executive leadership team continually achieves focused alignment and synchronization among all functions of the organization. After the horizon import and horizon roll and import, if the demand planning is required, you can go through supply chain calculations. There's also a scenario planning function. The supply calculation planning looks at any co-pack impact calculations. It calculates product family infinite plan as defined through our discussions of MRP in capacity planning process, and through rough cut planning or resource requirements planning. It then adjusts capacity if necessary to generate the finite plan. The S&O parameters calculates and assist in the creation of safety stock settings, any inventory limitations, or capacity constraint parameters. The additional data update takes care of various updates from an administration issue, such as gross requirements, additions to forecast horizon limitations, safety stock issue, and manual collaboration issues. As mentioned, scenario planning is a tool that helps identify a specific set of uncertainties or different realities which might happen to your business in the future as a result of various changes in capacity, demand, cost, other parameters. Scenario planning in Dynasis lets you set the input and simulation parameters. It then looks at the infinite plan and calculates a finite capacity plan, and then you have the ability to adjust parameters, which then makes a comparison between the options and presents a choices for the scenarios for either less cost or best optimization. Product family plan calculates and looks at appropriate capacity algorithms and generates them by plan configurations. And remember that no two organizations have exactly the same process. Process map functionality in QAD allows for an infinite number of permutations. Process maps are completely editable and self-definable for your organization process flows. I would recommend you read the process map training guide for your appropriate version of QAD. The process map training explains how to set up and edit process flows using the process administration tools and the map label maintenance. The supply chain is the system of an organization's people, activities, information, and resources involved in supplying a product or service to a customer. The supply chain is key to the successful execution of most events in business. Such activities as farming, refining, procurement, raw material, design, MRP, manufacturing, distribution, import, export, shipping, supply chains, transportation, information are all needed to supply the world with the customers, the goods and services it requires. The functions of plan, source, make, deliver, and return are becoming global activities. Supply chain applications are the next step in the evolution of commerce in the world. It is a great time to be in the supply chain. However, one of the issues that we find ourselves in with the evolution of supply chains and supply chain control tower management systems is what could be referred to as the gap in skill sets required to execute and operate these systems. From apex body of knowledge to forecasting knowledge to ethics to procurement to mathematics to an understanding of transportation and cost. These are tools in our toolkit that we need to develop and sharpen in ourselves and our progeny. Ben says an investment in knowledge pays the best dividends. Again, it's a great time to be in the supply chain. Supply chain management functionality is becoming more and more important in the terms of global supply and humanity. As we have seen, supply chain applications are dependent on the basic data in your ERP system. We have talked many times about the need for data accuracy in terms of quantities, processes, etc. in your QAD system. The QAD interface between ERP and supply chain management tools, as exampled by Genesis, are critical to the accuracy of SOVT, the single version of truth. In these dynamic and turbulent times, we may find changes in dates and other information need to be put into ERP, our QAD system, more frequent and in larger volumes. If this sounds like your situation, 32Soft has some good news. 32Soft data loaders can help your end users manage large volumes of QAD data from a convenient Excel format. 32Soft offers a complementing software trial. The installation process is simple, and there's a 60-day complimentary trial, so you can show results to your management team without cost outlays. Many thanks to my friends who assisted me in the details regarding Dynasys: Kevin Matson, Matthew Upstrong, Jeff Livingston, Robert Drew, Elaine Marshman. We hope you've enjoyed this review of some of the functionality available in the new supply chain management tools, such as Dynasys. We wish you the best for 2021. In March, we're going to talk about business relationships. The MUG West Coast and SQ or Southeast user groups have been delayed from March to April, so we'll see what that brings in terms of scheduling. But as of now, in May, we'll take a closer look at SNP functionality in both QAD and Dynasys. And then later this year, we're going to talk about EMT, Enterprise Material Transfer, and Distribution Requirements Planning. Please contact Denise or myself if you think any questions after the webinar is closed, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Denise, I will send it back to you, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Don. Informative as always. Can you hear me okay, Don?
Yes, I can. Do you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. I just got
Okay.
that weird tone in my ear, so I just wanted to make
Oh,
sure I
oh.
can be heard.
Just a quick word. 32 stopped Denise, Alex. The rest of us are not Dynasis experts. So if you have any specific questions about Dynasis, I'd suggest you go to the website. You can get through the QED website or through the Dynasis.com. So
Yes, thank you. Good point, Don. So we can real quick just take a look. Oh yeah, we do get a lot of questions about training, and yes, we are happy to help with your training needs. Since 2019, we've had, well, now more than 665 trainees among more than 23 custom training sessions. So give us a call or shoot us an email and we will get the training conversation started. Next month, as Don mentioned, we do have on March 24th the intricacies of QAD's business relations, which in EE is an intricate web of interconnected records. And then in May, we have sales and operations planning scheduled. And in between March and May webinars, we do, this is what Don definitely mentioned, we have the QAD User Groups Virtual Conference. As I mentioned, last month, the fall virtual conference was a great event. It was information-packed and fun-filled, a first-time virtual event, and it went really, really well. If you didn't attend, I do encourage you to participate if at all possible. Registration is free to all user group members, I believe. And with that, let me circle back, take a look. Still no questions, so we'll just return to today's webinar content about control towers, and that your attendance here could be a predictor of success because our future success is directly proportional to our ability to understand, adopt, and integrate new technology into our work. So if anybody thinks of any questions after, feel free to pick up the phone, give us a call, or send an email. We'll be happy to include answers to any questions received right up until the webinar is published. But for now, thank you all so very much for joining us. Don, did we cover everything?
I think we did. Just a quick word. I've told this to a couple of people. I wish I was young again, and I was just starting off my career in the supply chain, because it's a great time to be in the supply chain. There is so much on the horizon. The world is becoming smaller. The supply chain is becoming more and more important. I just read this morning that President Biden has directed a review of 4 primary aspects of supply chain. So it's a great time to be associated with that particular career choice. So I hope you enjoyed our little expose about what supply chain control towers, applications, planning, control management has to offer, and I can guarantee it will be part of your future in the supply chain. So thank you for your attention.
Indeed. Thanks, Don. Thanks very much as always. And hopefully we'll see you all back here again next month. Have a great week. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.